to ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on how it plans to address CalMac's ferry repair and maintenance costs in light of reports that these costs have doubled over the past 2 years.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hyslop.
Annual overhauls, regular maintenance and vessel repairs are required to achieve safety standards for carrying passengers and goods to and from our islands. In recent years, we have been investing additional sums to help maintain fleet reliability and resilience while we continue delivery of the 13 new vessels currently on order for CalMac routes. As part of the Clyde and Hebrides Ferry Service 3 contract arrangements, vessels will be subject to an increased programme of regular maintenance out with the annual overhaul schedule in order to reduce unplanned disruption and overhaul overruns. CalMac are in the early stages of considering and delivering this revised approach and will be engaging with communities in the coming months and weeks.
Katie Clark.
It is reported that over the last 11 years, more than £260 million has been spent on repairs. The bill was £50.1 million in 2024-2025, compared with £25 million 2 years earlier. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with campaigners that costs are out of control?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the member will be aware that annual overhauls are mandatory. These costs include a legally required period when every vessel must be taken off service for annual maintenance and overhaul. Now, there are issues in terms of inflation over this period, but she'll also be aware of the Caledonian Isles and its work continued for a considerable amount of time, and will have particularly increased those funds in that last year. And the costs and scope for these are planned well in advance in terms of the annual overhauls, the recertification of the vessels in line with statutory regulations, and sometimes that does include complex work which does cost, such as overhauling propulsion units or engines and sourcing spare parts to minimise disruption to lifeline services. So if I can emphasise that it's not just about repairs, this is about statutory annual overhauls, and particularly for the year that she is referring to, the Caledonian Isles will be been a substantial part of that, as it had a very extended period following its annual overhaul.
Katie Clark.
The increase in costs is clearly a result of the failure of the Scottish Government to order new vessels over many years and the ageing fleet. Given the delays to the Glen Rosa and the 2 Turkish vessels which have been ordered coming into service, and the number of vessels which keep being taken out of commission for repairs, how can CalMac realistically be expected to plan its annual deployment timetable with any degree of confidence?
Cabinet Secretary.
So management across the fleet, and particularly in periods of overhaul, which we are now in, can be quite complex. I would say that she needs to differentiate between some of the costs and maintenance with repairs. 50% of repairs are completed within 4 hours. Now, that can still cause disruption. But in terms of maintaining our fleet, we want to be proactive going forward with the new contract to ensure that with regular maintenance taking place, not just at a time of annual overhaul, but throughout the period, that would minimise disruption going forward. And obviously, with 13 new vessels coming into the fleet, that will address some of the issues that she understandably has addressed.
Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Having a resilient CalMac fleet means ensuring new vessels are delivered on time. And despite the First Minister's reassurance that the MV Glen Rosa would be setting sail before May's election, before Christmas we heard the dreadful news that this lifeline vessel will not be delivered until the end of this year. The blame for this national scandal lies squarely with SNP ministers. So can the Cabinet Secretary outline what additional costs will be incurred by this delay, where the money will come from, and what actions are ministers undertaking to ensure this vessel is finally delivered?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the statement about the time period for the Glen Rosa was made to Parliament in the regular updates that were made at the end of December. I would refer the member to that. What I think is really important is the service that's provided to the people of Arran in particular. Obviously, we are in our annual overhaul period where vessels are out being repaired, etc., and having that annual maintenance and that investment provision. But until such times as we have the Glen Rosa, I've been quite clear that I want to see a two-harbour operation, so both Troon and Ardrossan, a caveat being obviously we're in the annual winter overhaul period, and I think that's really important, not just for the people of Arran, but also for the communities of Ardrossan.
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I wish the Chamber a Happy New Year? But also thank the CalMac staff that have kept Irelanders moving in very difficult conditions over the last few weeks. But I do know that the news about the Glen Rosa was snuck out to Parliament, the Cabinet Secretary said, in the usual way, as traditionally has become a habit for this government, the minute we all rose for recess. The reality is, on the Gurk to Dunoon route, there have been 6,000 technical cancellations, not weather-related, technical, in the last 3 years. Nearly 800 on the Arran route alone. That's 16,000 technical cancellations in 3 years due to vessels being out of action. Will the Scottish Government look to extend and expand the compensation scheme so that all coastal communities and islands can benefit from being out of pocket through no fault of their own?
Cabinet Secretary.
So a number of points in that. I also would want to extend my thanks to the CalMac staff who, throughout winter periods, are often delivering a service in very, very difficult circumstances. In terms of looking at the technical and in terms of technical cancellations, they are a very small percentage compared to the weather cancellations, which are by far the most substantial. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of vessel journeys. The numbers he's talking about is around about 4%. Now, it does impact on you know, those technical aspect, but remember that's within hundreds of thousands of journeys every year. Now, he may have missed. Now, the other point you raised was the the regular 3-monthly reporting of the vessel completions. I was a member of the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee. They set the timescale of when this would be. This is always on a quarterly basis, and so the timing has been regular. I think from when I was on that committee, which was almost 2.5 years ago. So that's a regular drumbeat of reporting, which I think is appropriate and does come from those that are responsible for the delivery of those vessels. And finally, if you can bear with me, Presiding Officer, the reference to support, which is, of course is under the responsibility of Mary Ujon as an Islands Business Resilience Fund of 4.4 million, has been extended. That was announced at the end of last year. That is going to Mull and Isla, Colonsay and Isla, Jura and those communities. That was always the intention if we could extend that funding, but clearly initially it had to be focused on those that had had the most significant disruptions, and that's why the first tranche went to the relevant islands. I'm very pleased the SNP government has taken that seriously and has delivered and is delivering £4.4 million of business resilience to those communities.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions. I'll allow a moment or two for front benches to